Hi, this is a Sunday video for Monday because I won't be able to do a live Zoom, although I will be responding to your questions and whatnot, emails during my office hours. So I just wanted to review a couple of notes about the assignment you just did. You did introductions and the arch nemesis single point analysis, which is always the part where it's the most difficult and that requires the most revision. So let's just look at over here at my our class notes, and you can just drum this up yourself. But as we get closer to the first paper, I just want to say that I've been making a lot of suggestions and editing. Especially if you've been on Google Docs, I've been editing your, suggesting edits. And when I suggest like a punctuation edit, I'll often give you the link to the punctuation that we reviewed because it's really normal that it doesn't sink in the first time. And then you have to wrestle with how to actually adjust your sentences and how to spot it yourself. I mean, it's kind of a process. So I will refer you a couple of times, but after a while, if I see that you're not implementing changes, I do kind of give up a little bit. Or I just kind of, it's been noted and, the ball's in your court. So the other thing is that these assignments that you're doing, I am, annotating them and I'm saying, oh, look here, and we've got to have logic and check this. This isn't a sentence, needs an example, just giving you the basic feedback that you need. You're not obligated to revise those assignments, and I don't take off points really unless the thing you've come up with is completely off the track. Like if you're supposed to be writing a single point analysis and you've written a summary, then I will take points off. But if you're giving it a good try and it's in the ballpark, I don't take points off. However, when you submit your writing in an essay, all those things that I've been commenting on will kind of cause your score to go down a little bit. So, ooh, I'm getting a pop-up. Okay, so just remember that those are just for you for the future, and you may even be using some of these paragraphs in your paper. So there's no need to panic or ever, well, maybe tsunami, but for this, it says the paper is due on Wednesday, but that's just the rough draft, and I've really given you a lot of leeway on that. We'll look at that in a minute. So let's just review. Again, I'm giving you feedback in order to help you when you're doing your papers, not to detract points from these assignments that you're doing, and for you to get the hang of it and for you to know how to do it. So, okay, so here we go. Take a look at this. There's Canvas support. If you need to chat with someone live, for instance, if you have not been able to submit as a Google Doc, I have not been able, I can comment a little bit if you submit on a PDF. If you're putting things in a chat box, in a text box, there's not much I can do except copy the whole thing and then paste it into my comment box and then try to point out some things, but that takes a lot more time and it's not as efficient or helpful to you. So again, try to get the Google Docs, edit, make sure it's on, anyone can edit, or at SBCC. You can either do anyone, anywhere on the internet can edit, or anyone at SBCC, which I've been told is as far as you can go on your end. So we'll see about that. Get it in there and you'll be able to receive more help from me. Okay, so, but if you're jammed on some of these issues, there's student support, and these are the phone numbers and these are the links. And these are on class notes, so make sure that you utilize those if you need it. So Dallas, he had this great phrase. Now I'm going to just talk a little bit about your work from this previous week. Dallas said, spice it up later. And I love that he said that because it's, you put in the transitional sentence, like one startling point Carr makes. Let's just say you steal one of mine or to one of some other students that you've read. Just put it as a placeholder to get the ball rolling. Spice it up later. Okay. So again, these are wise words because revision, I'm going to say this to you a million times, revision is one of the most important, it's a principle, it's a guiding principle for anybody who does writing. And me as well, I'm writing these paragraphs and then I'll come back a week later and look at it and see, oh, wait a minute. It will have seemed perfect to me at the time. And then when I recast a fresh gaze, not so much, and then it needs tweaking. So, and I'm relaxed about it. I'm like, oh, I got to change the whole idea. I got to have a new example. Whereas you may be more tied to it, thinking, oh, I've come all this way, but try to be loose so that you don't strain your brain too much. Sometimes you've got to abandon ship if if an idea isn't working out, if you can't find the right evidence. If a sentence is all tangled up, just start a new one. There's all kinds of strategies for revision, but the important thing is to look at it again later. So for you all, you've written these paragraphs that you could use in your essay. You're going to pick one of the readings and you're going to write one of these 3 to 4 page essays. And you're going to have an introduction, and you're going to have a summary, then you're going to have single point analysis paragraphs and a conclusion. Conclusions, I'm leaving for you to read just the description of it in the assignment because it's not too complicated. However, it is not a repetition of, it's not one of those deals where you say, I am going to do X, Y, and Z, and then you say, and as we can see, X, Y, and Z has been done. And there's no as we can see in my paper. Make sure you don't do what I call announcements. As I've said before, none of that. It's all to be kind of invisible academic persuasion where you are the puppeteer, but you're present some of the time, but you're not making announcements that call attention to it as a document. Okay, so it's just sort of a thinking that lives in the world of ideas. Okay, so Dallas tells us to spice it up later. Good words, Dallas, nicely done. And then someone, I forget who now, wrote, and a couple of you said that one of the most important things was outside connection will help me most because I don't use analogies or personal connections as much as I should. I'm not sure what they meant by outside connection, but I took it to mean finding other sources or maybe using analogies or personal connections. I don't know what they meant. Now that I'm rereading it, I see that it needs revision. You see, there's my point. You think it made sense because I then read this one. I think that collaboration would benefit me most because when I proofread my own papers, this is the most true thing you'll ever hear. When you proofread yourself, especially after you've just read it, you can get a little ways, but not too far. It's best to step away, ask someone else to read it, or read it out loud to someone else and make your corrections as you go. As you hear it out in the world, you can recognize, if you're able to focus on the content as you're saying the words, you can really tighten up your logical sequencing, get rid of extraneous words. You'll see that on some of your edits, your suggested edits I've made, I will say not necessary, does not further the information. So when something is repetitious or just kind of filler words, I always say just take them out, not making any headway. And anytime you have filler, it's a chance for the reader to stray or forget or what. You want to keep things as, close to the bone as possible. Okay. So that was good. That was a really good thing to notice, that collaboration, just because we're alone in our rooms, lonely in COVID, doesn't mean that you can't reach out to somebody on Skype, Zoom, your mom, your friend, your roommate, your neighbor, whatever the case may be. It can really help just to have them as an audience as you read it out loud. So that's a tip. And like I said once before, that in class, if we were actually in class together, we would be doing a lot of reading out loud together. And I usually kind of go around to the different groups and listen in myself. And people tend to get a lot of valuable feedback, not just from the other people, just from the act of reading it out loud. You'll see your brain goes, oh, I pictured that differently, than how I actually worded it. And then they're able to make revisions. Okay, so single point analysis. Let's just have a talk about that. This is the crux of, it's kind of what you're, the summary, the MLA, you're practicing the scales. Now you've got to create a piece. You've got to create a concerto. I don't know. You got to you got to get in the big game. There's many analogies for this sort of thing. You got to move the ball down the field. so that you have the tools, but now it's really the thinking part of it is where you have to decide what's one idea from this. And it can be a very small part of the whole. And you need to extricate that idea and then explain it a bit as in the context of the article or talk. And then you have your own original idea. Now, some of you did a summary because I'm not sure why. Maybe you didn't read the instructions or didn't understand them, or you got forlorn. And I sure hope that you didn't. Just give it a try. My motto on these things is even when you don't know, give it a go. And you've got the examples, and believe me, I understand this is the hardest part of it, is to find something and have something interesting and original to say about it, either by an example from your own life that supports the idea, a disagreement, say, hey, wait a minute, what about this? Or something in history that happened that is similar. This is like something else. So it's another way of understanding or illuminating or looking at the idea. You can be creative there, but the more difficult thing is writing sentences that are logically sequenced, in which the quotes and the ideas that you've selected are meaningfully inserted, and there's no gaps in, where suddenly a new idea is inserted in there. Sometimes I tell students, what you're doing is you're making a sandwich with carefully layered lettuce and tomato and turkey or whatever. You're not making soup. And if you just throw in all the ingredients in a crazy soup, you can't follow it. It's a sequence of ideas that are logically sequenced. Well, that's kind of repetitious, but they are sequenced in such a way that the reader can easily digest them. Now, because sometimes when I'll be working with a writer, they'll say, well, but I say that later. And I say, but you need to say it here, because it does matter the order in which you present these ideas. If you want them to hinge together, if you have one weak link, the whole thing can fall apart. So you'll sometimes see me saying logical sequence. Sometimes I refer you right back to the Google slides about how to write focused paragraphs, because there's a whole lot of things that kind of went astray. Again, it's the most complicated one for me to comment on. So sometimes I'll just make one or two comments. And now I say to you, it's up to you to look at the sample paragraphs and to look at the instructions and the description of what those paragraphs are supposed to look like, and to pay attention to the comments as I've been able to make them so far. Those comments as we go will diminish a bit once I see if people are not responding to them, or if they are, then I can continue, but I'm wanting to give the most to the people who are wanting that commentary. And there's always the writing center, let's not forget that. Okay, so just a quick thing. This is Graham's. Graham had a great idea and he ran with it. And then Graham, I'm going to also use this as an example of, I read it the first time. I thought, well, that's just great. And then as I read it, about to read it to you, akin to reading out loud, I went, oh, wait a minute, there's a few little spots. So you can see that I put editing suggestions. So Graham, just have a look at those. So he takes the one idea, and this is a great example for everybody. He just took out this thing about video games can result in automatic thinking. And then Graham writes, I found it bizarre to entertain the thought that only video games in particular cause this type of, he said only video games. And then I realized in the text, Carr is not saying that it's only video games. He's talking about all kinds of internet-y activity. So I just said, oh, maybe not only, but video games in particular cause this type of thinking. And, you can look back at the text, but I think it's a reasonable edit. And then he had the word it's part of life for hundreds of years, and the it's won't work there because it seems as if you might be referring to video games, and that would be crazy, Graham. We can't have video games around for hundreds of thousands of years. But that's the danger, everybody, of it and this. You've got to sometimes reiterate, sometimes with the exact words, and then if you're, getting the right rhythm, you're going to find alternate words that, precisely define the same idea that you had before, synonyms and whatnot. Okay. But it's a great idea, though, because he's talking about video games and this type of thinking. A part of life, animals have always defaulted, look at how he uses that word, to their instincts, which is essentially the most automatic thinking can get. It's a simple, you have to do the punctuation right here to see how we go. So I'm going to put a semicolon there. It's a simple innate knowledge. And then I thought, well, is it knowledge? And so I thought, what about immediate call to action? So he can do what he wants with that. And feeling that creatures are obligated to pursue for survival, instinct. Creatures have had automatic thinking. Graham is saying, what do you mean video games are causing this? This has been around forever. This is part of being a creature. Animals walking as a pack is an example of automatic thinking because it comes so naturally that many don't even realize they're doing it. Humans' jobs, even when gathering, cleaning, hiding, all came automatically because they were either used to doing it or it was basic necessity that didn't require much thought. The concept of automatic thinking has been a part of life longer than anyone who is reading this has ever lived or will ever live for that matter. And yet Carr used it as a negative term to address exclusively effects caused by the use of the internet. It may have been one of his most engaging ideas, maybe I think you might want to put there, but I do not entirely agree with his contextual use of this concept. So that was a fun one. Graham was on it. He was like, oh, we're talking about the cave people and the animals and automatic thinking. Is it really caused or has it already been here? He just brings it up. And he's super cool because at the end he goes, it's very engaging. You know, this what Carr has to say. He doesn't go, Carr's out of his mind. What's he thinking? Stop him. Cancel him. You know, in not good academic writing, it's sort of like kind of calm, reasonable thinking where you're courteous to people with whom you disagree. And so good on you, Graham. Okay, so let me just say, so that for some of you, that can serve as an example of original thinking, and it stays on the point. It's a small thing, automatic thinking, all right? Don't bite off 5 ideas. Some of you got tangled up in listing automatic thinking, scattered thinking, lack of focus, the monkey experiment with the nerves, and you had this soup of ideas that I couldn't figure out where the thing was going. Remember, it is work to make the topic sentence organized to what you're going to write, and you might not quite craft that until the paragraph's finished because you have to see how it goes. Are you able to stay on one topic? It's harder to do than you think, especially when you're looking at quotes and you're seeing the whole of it and it's all kind of awash in your mind. So you want to make sure that you really say, well, what's one of these ideas that I can capture, describe how he's, putting it, the context in which it appears in the text, and then what is my original analysis. Remember, you can use your own experience and say, well, I've seen this in action in my own life. And you can say my own life. It's you that you can't use. Don't use you. It's really not, it doesn't set an academic tone at all. The occasional I or my experience, if it's supporting evidence, is just fine. Writers do it all the time. And you'll see some of the speakers, use you as well. But for writing, we're gonna go easy on the yous, all right? And it's one of the don'ts that's on the slide. So if you've got you everywhere, I either suspect you of not looking at the slides or maybe more reasonably just forgetting that was one, and it's a pretty easy habit to get into. Okay, I think I digressed a little bit there. Analysis. So you can bring in other information. Now, we haven't discussed what sources you can use, but what you can't do is say a recent study shows. If you find information, it has to be from a credible source. And on Canvas, there is a document up at the first module that talks about what's a credible source. And I can tell you casually that it's just something like Scientific American, the Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins University. There could be some, if you get information out of a newspaper, they're getting a little suspect these days. So it could be the LA Times, maybe the New York Times. They've had a little credibility blip, I think, lately. At the Atlantic, you can find a source that is obviously reputable, more or less. With the explosion of you know, information becoming, you know, suspect of all kind of, you know, tampering and misinformation. You know, this whole thing about what is a reputable source is a little more slippery. So we just try to go with the science, maybe National Geographic. I mean, it's something that we will have heard of, or a person conducting research affiliated with a big hospital or university, something like that. You can't just find a place where somebody said something, and you can't just say a study shows and then leave it at that. That's not, in academic writing, you have to back it up. You have to have found something that comes from a source that is more or less reputable. And that's kind of a, you know, you can give it a try, and then if it doesn't seem like it can work as a source, then I'll let you know. And on that document, there's a list of the document that's on Canvas that says credibility of sources. It says which ones are kind of okay. Okay, so just a quick bit. I'm just going to tell you about, oops, that's not, oh, that is Alec. Okay, so I'm going to let you read Alec's on your own, but I'm just going to show you Chloe's introduction. This introduction was great. And some of you on the introductions don't start in the article such and such by so-and-so. So I'm not sure why people were doing that. And again, when I say people, it was like 4 in each class. So that's not an introduction. Introduction is when you have something interesting before all that, and then at the bottom comes the introduction of the text and all of that. So Chloe, look at Chloe, she's got this like scenario. Melinda and Tom have been dating for 2 years. They know everything about each other, yet they've never met in person. A text here and an Instagram picture, I would have said there. This is the basis for their relationship. Finally, Tom is flying across the country to see Melinda. She opens the door. They stare. They don't know how to start or what to say. Melinda thinks how different Tom looks in person. Tom notices her voice is squeaky. Silence. They have nothing to say to each other. They've never even spoken to each other. Strange? Not in today's world where friendships, romances, and marriages are based solely, I wouldn't say they're based solely on it. I would say can be, or something like that. Sorry, because they're not, I mean, we know that they are not based solely, can be. Think about solely, okay, Chloe? In the secret words we build in technology. The secret fantasy worlds we have learned to create, and where we can be whoever, whatever we want to be. Oh, and Chloe, that's a fragment. See, and I didn't see that at first, so we'll just underline it there. So think about that. You know, an article written by MIT, and then this is great, she slides right into it. The flight from conversation, she defends the idea that the need for human interaction becomes obsolete with the implementation, paving the way with answers. And as I read that, I think she defends the idea for the need for human interaction. You got to check that. She defends the idea that it's becoming obsolete. Well, she doesn't want it to become obsolete. That's slightly misleading. So check that too. All right, and then there it is. I read it once and I read it again. And on the second read, I said, oh, wait 1 second. There's a couple of revisions I would make. But anyway, this shows you how fantastic it is to do something out of left field and give us a scenario, and it got the attention and it was fun. So good on you, Chloe. And the introduction can take all manner of forms, and there's all kinds of examples in the student papers that you'll see in, on Canvas. And here, Alec did an intro. And he started with a alone together, and we got a little bit, you know what, I think I'm gonna let you read this one at your own leisure. Okay, so there's that. I'm gonna just come on over to course modules, and I'm just gonna look at what's coming up. So we are getting to it here. We are all the way to the rough draft on Wednesday, okay? So we're gonna look at it. So you can, and I've changed the way the documents are in a sense, but you don't need to worry about that. You can click on the link to the document and that'll take you to the Google Doc, or you can stay on this one. And here you go. The pressure is off. This is an assignment. It's graded as an assignment, not as an essay. The essays are worth more. They're weighted more heavily, but this way you get a little feedback on the paragraphs that you choose to use in your essay. So you can write the whole thing, or you can just submit 1 or 2 paragraphs. I wanted everybody to get the 10 points on this so I can make sure, but I want to be able to say, answer your question, something. Use example essays and all about paragraphs and strategies. The answers are all here. The materials are all here, but it depends on you and if you're going to take the time to look back at them and give them another whirl. And here's an outline. Let's look at the directions real quick. So Essay 1 is 3 to 4 pages. Choose an article from the list below, and then you'll see the list is down there. Write a 3.5 to 4 page essay in which you describe the extent and manner which you agree, disagree, or add on to the main ideas. So that should come as no surprise. That's what you've been building towards the whole time. Use the academic writing techniques. You got the MLA. Do not use you. Okay, I'm going to emphasize that again. A few are okay, maybe in the intro and the conclusion, but let's go in a different way to set the academic tone. In quoted material, it's fine. And get off the says and talks about if you can spot it. And this is another testament to the fact that it's very hard to see. So it's best to get someone else. Can you ask somebody, can you look through this to see if I said says or talks about, if that's one of your tendencies? Getting somebody else to feedback, somebody else's feedback is fantastic. Okay, so here are some words. Look at these: recalls, points out. Someone used the, oh, you know what, somebody, oh, we're not, don't use that. Determines, somebody used this one, spotlights. That was cool. So choose one of these. Here we are. This is everything you've read so far. Pick one and then go to town. Introduction, summary, single point analysis, paragraphs, conclusion, right? And then I go even further with my description, all of which should be kind of starting to make sense to you at this point because we've broken down the parts. Now we're just going to put them together. An elegant and engaging introduction, that's the first paragraph. Second paragraph is the summary, which seamlessly integrates paraphrase and quotation to accurately represent the content of the text. No opinion in the summary, just the words as they lay. This buys your ticket to the academic conversation. And then come the single point analysis paragraphs. You need at least 2 of them. They can be kind of long. I would say if they're a page, that's okay. You probably wouldn't want them to be a page and a half. That's super long. You might want to trim that back. But they can be, you know, substantial. You don't, if they're real short, they're probably underdeveloped, meaning they don't have a specific example. They're too generalized, or they're just a partial summary of some kind. So you got to think about that. And you have the examples. And discussed, applied, illustration, analysis, option. Oh, and one of the options is one of the paragraphs could be just based on your original thinking about the topic. As long as you've given the author his or her due, you know, you've really handled the material. And then if there's one, you know, aspect that didn't come up in the talk, you can use language like one of the ideas related to this problem of division of attention that Carr doesn't think about is X, you know, and then your whole paragraph could be your own kind of thing about that. So it's not that I'm putting you in a straitjacket with this format, and it's not exactly the 5-paragraph essay that you may have seen before. This analysis business is really the key. So simply quoting Carr on Carr, or, you know, Kane on Kane, if you're just supporting the evidence in agreement, that's fine to agree. But if the only evidence you're using is from the text and there's nothing original in there, then it's just summarizing and going around. So you do have to add something to it that's your particular spin. Okay, and then you do the conclusion. And so down below on this, I gave you an example of 2 paragraphs that begin an essay from the first paper. This is a student's first paper, and I just took the first 2 paragraphs. So that's how you could get started. You could just take 1 paragraph and then say, oh yeah, I got to write an intro. And then here she is. She's She's leaving her apartment, et cetera, et cetera. And then she did it this way. In the New York Times, she did it in the beginning of the second paragraph. You can do it at the end of the first paragraph or the beginning of the second. All right. So then that was about the flight from conversation. So here you have a nice example. And remember, I'm going to kind of skip to modules. If you go to modules, you're going to see that you have at the, let's see where they're, example essays. There's a whole host of essays from students. And by the way, I'm always looking for new ones to put in there. In groups retreat, we haven't read that one, but you've read the introverts. Look, there's two different essays that are done by two different students, and they're different. They've handled them differently. This is essay 2, where there's 2 sources. You might want to look at that a little bit later. But at the same time, these are the ones you can look for this example. But at the same time, if you look at one with 2 essays, 2 sources, it's still going to give you the same tips: how to use MLA, how to integrate quotes, all kinds of things like that. Okay, so here we have paragraphs. If you're having problems with the focus paragraph, that's the Google Slides. Example of single point analysis, example of a summary, example of a summary, example of a summary, single point analysis. So you've got enough examples, but the question is, are you going to go to the trouble? So lately, I've been going to the trouble. That's why I'm on the internet so peacefully, showing you all of this. Okay, so that's going to be the situation. So I will not be having a Zoom on Monday live, but you can send your questions in, and also, you know, I grade most everything by Friday. So if you've resubmitted something, I don't always get to it right away. You know, you might send me an email and say, can you read my, you know, or put it in the email as well. That could make it even quicker for me, because people tend, if they're going to submit something late, I don't know when that's going to be, and I can't be strapped to this computer. You know, I've got to move around. So I can't be checking it constantly. So by Friday, I've pretty much got it done. So if you're submitting late, again, the assignments are open before, during, and after. So 3 weeks, there's a 3-week window on the assignments. You can get the jump on it a week ahead, and then they're due, you know, on the Wednesday. And then you've got another week. It'll be late, but for most things that won't matter much. If you get a 9 instead of a 10, you know, usually that isn't the make or break situation, as if you've been keeping up. Okay, so I'm sorry if I went on too long, but I was trying to get it all in. Remember, the single point analysis paragraphs are the hardest, and time well spent if you really think hard about what is next to what sentence is next to what, and how each phrase is connected to the previous and the subsequent, and how it is furthering the argument that you are making precisely, that it is not bringing in new ideas. Sometimes oh yeah, TMI, too many ideas, not too much information. So you'll see that I have said that to a couple of you, too many ideas. What is the topic here? It's a hodgepodge, it's a smattering, it's a soup. We want a carefully layered section of a specific topic. Okay, so hopefully you can email me your questions, and Wednesday, the rough draft. And it's rough, you know, you could send me a question that you have about it, as long as your question is specific. If your question is, I'm not sure how to do it, I can't help you too much, because I've already been kind of doing that by having you practice and then writing careful instructions, giving you samples. The issue with the samples, and when I tell you, oh, here's the punctuation fix that you need, the ball's in your court on that. You've got to absorb it, and I know that that's a lot more work than just simply looking at it. So I understand that, and you can take that on your own. Okay, so send your emails. I'll be here for the office hour, but I just won't be on Zoom at that time. So I'll be able to respond to your emails, but and maybe I can talk to you on Tuesday if need be. And if anybody wants to have, you know, talk to me on Zoom, just one-on-one about their paper, that's fine. And we can find a time probably Tuesday. Okay. All right. So that's going to be that. Everybody, good luck. Stay calm and carry on. I'm going to end the meeting.